Welcome to our deep dive on captivating storytelling.
Yeah,
We've got excerpts from Writing for Emotional Impact by Karl Iglesias.
cool.
And we're going to try to figure out how to write stories that really connect with readers.
Okay.
It's like getting a cheat sheet straight from Hollywood.
Right.
We're talking insights from screenwriters, producers, even script readers, those unsung heroes.
Yeah, it's really fascinating how this book digs into the psychology of storytelling.
Oh, yeah.
It's not just about having a good plot. It's about making the reader, you know, feel something specific on every page.
So it's like we're cooking up feelings instead of cakes, like a recipe book.
That's a great analogy. The book emphasizes, evoking emotion. That's the heart of any successful story.
Okay, so how do you do that?
Well, the book actually has this great quote.
Okay.
Great writers instinctively use linguistic sleight of hand to generate an emotional response in their audience.
Oh, I like that.
So mastering that sleight of hand
Yeah.
is what can make a script, stand out in the pile.
Oh, yeah, especially when you think about those Hollywood script readers.
Right.
They must be just drowning in scripts, right? What
Yeah.
makes them actually pay attention?
That's exactly what the book addresses.
Yeah.
It says, the only reason we reject a script is that it's boring.
Ouch.
So you have to, grab them emotionally right
Yeah.
from page one.
How do you do that?
Well, one way is through the concept itself,
Oh,
the core idea of the story.
okay.
The book talks about uniquely familiar concepts.
So something that feels fresh but also relatable?
Exactly. Think of these examples in the book.
Okay.
A radio talk show host trying to redeem himself after his words, incite violence.
Uh-huh.
A group of strangers stuck in a remote location, forced to face their fears.
Yeah.
A guy reliving the same day over and over, learning life lessons along the way.
Wait, those are like Fisher King, The Thing, and Groundhog Day. Those are all those high concept movies.
Yeah.
The idea itself is so strong.
Exactly, you got it.
Yeah.
But what about, those stories that are more character-driven or explore subtle themes?
Yeah.
What the book refers to as soft concept stories.
So how do you make those stand out? When they're competing with all those, high concept blockbusters.
That's where things get interesting.
Yeah.
Even with a soft concept story, a strong emotional core is absolutely essential.
All right.
There are techniques to make those more marketable, but ultimately it's that emotional resonance that's going to hook the reader.
And speaking of emotional core, the book also dives into theme, the underlying message that drives the story.
Right.
Why is theme so important?
Well, theme adds depth and meaning. It takes a story beyond just entertainment, makes it resonate on a deeper level.
Okay. The book breaks down some universal themes into categories like separation reunion, humanity in jeopardy, and relationship.
Exactly. So separation reunion, think of it as like themes of loss and rediscovery. Dorothy's journey in The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
Or a child searching for a lost parent. Humanity in jeopardy. Anything from an alien invasion in Independence Day
Right.
to a natural disaster in Twister.
Uh-huh.
And then, of course, relationships covers, all those messy complexities of love, family, and connection. Like a classic rom-com.
Okay. That makes sense. But how do you weave those themes into a story without being too obvious or preachy?
Yeah, well, subtlety is key.
Yeah.
The book says themes should be felt, not explicitly stated.
Okay.
Like take the movie Tootsie.
Okay.
It's a comedy, but it subtly explores themes of gender roles and self-acceptance.
So it's like the theme is woven into the fabric of the story,
Exactly.
not like a billboard plastered on there.
Yeah, yeah. Now let's talk about characters.
Yeah.
The book stresses how crucial characters are in creating that emotional connection with the reader.
Well, that's a no-brainer, right? You need compelling characters.
Right.
What are some of the techniques the book suggests for making them relatable and fascinating?
Well, one technique is using contrasting traits. Characters feel more human when they have both positive and negative qualities.
Like Gordon Gekko's greed is good philosophy in Wall Street.
Exactly. He's repulsive, but also strangely charismatic.
Right.
Another technique is showing vulnerability,
Okay.
allowing the reader to see a character's fears, weaknesses, insecurities. This invites empathy.
Like Melvin in As Good as It Gets.
Yes.
He's so abrasive on the surface.
Right.
But underneath, he's, vulnerable and lonely.
Yeah. And that's what makes you connect with him.
Makes you really connect with him.
And then there's the idea of exploring the deeper needs behind a character's desires.
Okay.
This adds, complexity and depth.
Like Clarice Starling in Silence of the Lambs.
Yes.
Her desire to save a victim masks a deeper need to confront her own past trauma.
Precisely.
These are some powerful examples. The book also mentions something called the two-column trick. What's that all about?
Right. The two-column trick is a way to map out a character's, inner and outer world. It's a visual tool to help represent their thoughts, feelings, motivations, alongside their actions and dialogue.
So it helps you make sure your characters are more than cardboard cutouts. They have real depth and complexity.
Now, shifting gears a bit, the book argues that each scene should be like a mini-story.
Okay.
With its own arc and emotional purpose.
How does that work?
Each scene needs to contribute to the overall emotional journey of the story.
Okay, so what are some of the key elements that make for a truly compelling scene?
The book really emphasizes active dialogue.
Okay.
Every line should be goal-oriented, revealing character, not just conveying information.
So no long-winded speeches that just dump information on the reader.
Exactly. The dialogue should crackle with purpose and subtext.
Okay, so how do you write dialogue that has subtext? All those unspoken layers of meaning? Seems tricky.
It's a craft. But the book actually provides specific techniques for creating subtext.
Like what?
For example, you can use double meanings. Contrast a character's words with their actions. Or leave things, unsaid.
Okay.
Allowing the reader to fill in the blanks.
So it's almost like writing a mystery within the dialogue itself?
You could say that, and the book also talks about creating an emotional palette for each scene.
Emotional palette? What does that even mean?
It means that a scene should move through a range of emotions.
Yeah.
Not just be, stuck on one note.
Okay.
The book suggests techniques like using what they call push-button dialogue.
Okay.
Where a character says something intentionally provocative to get a reaction.
Oh, I see. It's like adding spices to a dish.
Yes.
To create a more complex and interesting flavor.
Exactly.
So instead of a scene just being, sad, maybe it starts with sadness, then shifts to anger and ends with a glimmer of hope.
That's a great example. And finally, let's not forget about description.
Okay.
How does the book approach using description to enhance the emotional impact of a story? Well, the book emphasizes that vivid descriptions should paint a picture in the reader's mind.
Right. It's about showing, not telling.
Exactly.
Engaging the reader's senses and imagination.
The book recommends using strong verbs, evocative language, and embracing visual symbolism.
Okay.
Think about using metaphors, colors, and even weather patterns to subtly enhance the mood and subtext of a scene.
So instead of just saying what a room looks like, you're trying to make the reader feel something when they're in that room.
Precise.
Like if a character is feeling anxious, you might describe the room as feeling claustrophobic or the air as being thick with tension.
Exactly. And what's interesting is that the book also emphasizes being concise with your descriptions.
Okay.
Every word should count.
So it's not about flowery prose or long, drawn-out descriptions. It's about choosing your words carefully.
Yes.
And making every detail work toward that emotional impact. I'm starting to see a pattern here. Whether it's concept, theme, character, or description, it seems like that emotional impact is, the guiding principle.
It is. And the book provides a wealth of techniques to help writers achieve that.
Such as?
Well, for example, it suggests replacing passive descriptions with actions.
Okay.
Instead of saying the room was dark, you could say shadows clung to the corners of the room.
Oh, that's much more evocative. It creates an immediate mood and feeling.
Exactly. The book also encourages writers to use details that reveal character and setting implicitly.
Okay.
Instead of saying he was nervous, you might say his hands trembled as he reached for the doorknob.
Oh, that's a great example. You're not just telling the reader he's nervous, you're showing them through his actions.
Right.
Which allows them to, experience his nervousness on a deeper level.
Precisely. It's all about engaging the reader on a visceral level.
This deep dive is packed with great insights.
It is. And what's exciting is that these techniques can be applied to any genre, from thrillers to comedies to romances.
It's about understanding the tools that make a story grab someone by the heart and refuse to let go. So let's dive deeper into those tools, starting with how to craft a killer opening that hooks the reader from page 1.
Let's do it. The opening of your script. It's kind of like a first date.
Oh.
You only have a limited amount of time to make a good impression.
Right.
And convince the reader to stick around.
So how do you craft an opening that's more captivating than catastrophic?
Well, the book suggests a few different approaches.
Okay.
One is to start with an image, that instantly grabs the reader's attention.
Like a visually stunning scene.
Exactly.
Sets the tone and mood for the whole story.
Think about the opening shot of a spaceship hurtling through space,
Oh, wow.
or a lone figure silhouetted against a breathtaking sunset.
Ooh.
It's about creating that sense of wonder or intrigue right from the very beginning.
Yeah.
Another approach is to open with a strong voice.
Okay.
This could be through a compelling voiceover narration or dialogue that reveals a unique character's perspective.
Like the iconic opening lines of Sunset Boulevard. All right, Mr. DeMille, I'm ready for my close-up.
Exactly. That instantly tells you you're in for a wild ride.
Yeah.
You can also start with a provocative question,
Okay.
something that makes the reader curious,
Right.
keeps them reading to find the answer.
Like setting up a mystery that needs to be solved.
Exactly. And then there's the classic hook of opening with a strong action or event.
Oh, okay.
This throws the reader right into the heart of the story, creates immediate tension and excitement.
So like a car chase.
Yes.
A heist.
A natural disaster.
Got it.
The key is to choose an opening that fits the genre and tone of your story.
Okay.
But it should always aim to capture the reader's interest from the very first page.
This makes me think about how the book dives into the whole concept of story.
Right.
And breaks down those essential elements.
Yeah.
What makes a good story tick?
That's a great point. The book emphasizes that a good story isn't just a series of events.
Okay.
It's about how those events affect the characters
Right.
and make the reader feel something.
So it's not just about what happens, but about how it makes the characters and the reader feel. It's like the difference between reading a news report and reading a novel.
You got it. And speaking of characters, the book explores the idea of the protagonist,
Okay.
the main character who drives the story forward.
So the protagonist is like the engine of the story,
Yeah.
taking it to its destination.
I like that analogy.
Sure.
And for that engine to run, it needs fuel.
Okay.
And that fuel is the protagonist's desire,
Okay.
what they want to achieve in the story.
Their goal, their ambition, their
Yeah.
driving force.
Precisely. And as the protagonist chases their desire, they encounter obstacles and complications, both internal and external.
Okay.
These are the roadblocks in their path.
So the obstacles create conflict, tension, keeping the reader engaged, wondering what's going to happen next.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The book also talks about turning points.
Turning points, those moments that change the entire direction of the story, yeah, those can be real nail biters.
Exactly. Each turning point creates a new question that needs to be answered,
Okay.
raises the stakes,
Yeah.
keeps the reader emotionally invested.
And it all builds up to the climax where everything comes to a head.
That's right.
Okay, so we've got the protagonist, their desire, the obstacles, the turning points, and the climax. But what about the ending?
Right.
How do you wrap up a story in a satisfying way?
Well, the book stresses the importance of resolution, tying up loose ends, and providing closure.
So the ending isn't just about stopping the story. It's about making sure the reader feels satisfied, like the journey was worth it.
Exactly. The book mentions that a good ending often mirrors the beginning in some way,
Oh, interesting.
reflecting the character's growth and the themes explored in the story.
That's
It might offer hope, a lesson learned, or even a lingering question for the reader to think about.
It's like a circle that's been completed, but with a new perspective.
Exactly. The book also highlights the power of surprise.
So not just random twists and turns,
Right.
but moments that feel both unexpected and inevitable, like something that catches you off guard, but then you realize it makes perfect sense.
That's exactly what the book is getting at. Those surprises can re-energize the story,
Yeah.
keep the reader emotionally engaged
Yeah.
right up until the last page.
This is making me realize that crafting a compelling story goes beyond just plot points and structure.
Yes.
It's about guiding the reader on an emotional journey.
Absolutely. And the book provides tools to help writers tap into those emotions,
Okay.
creating stories that resonate on a much deeper level.
So we're not just telling stories, we're creating emotional experiences. And speaking of emotions, the book has a whole section on crafting emotionally charged scenes.
Right.
Where do you even begin with something like that?
It starts with understanding the different types of emotions you can evoke in a reader.
So let's break that down. What kind of emotions are we talking about here?
Well, one of the most basic yet essential emotions is interest.
Okay.
You have to capture the reader's interest from the start
Right.
and keep them engaged throughout the story.
Otherwise, they'll just put the script down.
Exactly. And the book actually offers techniques for creating and sustaining interest,
Such as.
like introducing conflict, raising the stakes, and using cliffhangers to keep the reader on the edge of their seat.
So it's all about building suspense and anticipation, making the reader just desperate to know what happens next.
Exactly. Then there's curiosity.
Curiosity,
Okay.
that desire to learn more, uncover secrets, discover hidden truths. It's what keeps us reading.
You nailed it. You can create curiosity in your story by introducing mysteries,
Okay.
withholding information, and hinting at future events.
It's about turning the reader into an active participant,
Yes.
not just a passive observer.
And of course, there's anticipation. Building anticipation is key for keeping the reader emotionally invested.
That feeling of excitement, eagerness for what's to come, like waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Precisely. The book talks about how you can create anticipation by foreshadowing events, raising questions,
Right.
and delaying outcomes.
So it's like building momentum, like a train picking up speed.
Yeah.
But you're not quite sure where it's headed.
You've got it. And speaking of taking the reader on a ride, the book discusses the power of surprise and humor.
Surprise and humor, two of my favorite things.
Mine too. The book explains how surprise can be used to evoke a sense of wonder, delight, or even shock.
Like a plot twist that comes out of nowhere and changes everything.
Exactly. Then there's humor, which can be used to relieve tension, connect with the reader, and make serious topics more approachable.
It's like a breath of fresh air
Yeah.
in the middle of a tense or heavy scene.
Exactly. But it's important to remember that humor should always serve the story. Don't just throw it in for cheap laughs.
So it's all about finding that right balance, like a chef adding the perfect amount of spice to a dish.
That's a great analogy. Speaking of balance, the book also explores darker emotions,
Oh,
like fear and sadness.
yeah. Those emotions aren't always fun to experience, but they're definitely powerful.
They are. And the book suggests using them thoughtfully,
Okay.
not shying away from them completely.
So how do you evoke fear or sadness without overwhelming the reader?
Right.
Or making the story too depressing?
Well, the book suggests techniques like creating vulnerability, highlighting the consequences of actions, and using vivid descriptions to make the reader feel the character's pain or fear.
So it's about making those emotions feel real and relatable, even in fictional situations.
Exactly. And, it's interesting how the book connects these darker emotions to a sense of hope.
Hope. How does that work?
Even in the darkest of stories, there should always be a glimmer of hope,
Okay.
a sense that things can get better. It might be a small act of kindness, a moment of connection, or just the protagonist's refusal to give up.
It's like a light at the end of the tunnel,
Yes,
reminding the reader that even when things are tough, there's always a reason to keep going.
exactly. And that's a really powerful message, isn't it?
It is. This deep dive is showing me just how much goes into crafting a story that really connects with readers.
Yeah.
It's about understanding the emotional landscape
Yeah.
and using all the tools at your disposal to create a powerful and unforgettable experience.
It is. And we haven't even touched on all the techniques the book has for writing compelling dialogue.
Dialogue. It
Yeah.
can make or break a story. So let's talk about the art of writing dialogue that sings. What are some of the key things the book highlights?
One of the most important, Donnelly, is that dialogue should serve multiple purposes.
Okay.
It's not just about characters talking to each other.
Right.
It's about revealing character, moving the plot forward, creating tension, and even conveying those unspoken layers of subtext.
So every line of dialogue should be working overtime.
Exactly. No wasted words, no pointless chit-chat. The book also emphasizes making your dialogue sound natural and believable.
So no characters speaking in long, convoluted sentences
Right.
or using words they'd never use in real life.
Precisely. The book stresses the importance of listening to how people actually talk,
Okay.
paying attention to their rhythm, their word choices, even their pauses and interruptions.
So it's about capturing the nuances of everyday speech, making the dialogue feel authentic.
Exactly. And then there's the whole art of subtext.
Ah, yes, subtext, the hidden meanings, unspoken emotions beneath the words.
Exactly. The book provides techniques for creating subtext,
Oh, like what?
like using double meanings, contrasting a character's words with their actions
Okay.
and leaving things unsaid.
It's like an iceberg,
Yeah.
where what's visible is only a tiny part of the story.
That's a great analogy. And you know what's fascinating? The book encourages writers to play with dialogue, to experiment,
Mm.
and find their own unique voice.
So it's not about following rigid rules. It's about understanding the principles and applying them in creative and unexpected ways.
Exactly. And there's this great section where the book dives into specific techniques for writing dialogue. That pops off the page.
Well, let's hear it.
One technique is to use short, punchy sentences.
Keep it tight. Keep it impactful.
Exactly. Think about the movie Jaws and that iconic line, you're going to need a bigger boat,
Yeah.
short, to the point, and unforgettable.
It's amazing how much power a few well-chosen words can have.
It is. The book also suggests using active verbs and concrete nouns.
Okay.
Instead of saying he was angry, you could say he slammed his fist on the table.
That definitely paints a more vivid picture.
Exactly. And the book even encourages writers to embrace the power of silence.
Silence. How can silence be powerful in dialogue?
Sometimes what's left unsaid can be more powerful than what's spoken.
Oh, okay.
A well-placed pause
Yeah.
or a meaningful look can speak volumes.
Right, right. It's about creating tension and letting the reader fill in the blanks with their own imagination.
Exactly. Another technique the book emphasizes is using dialogue to reveal character.
Right. The way a character speaks can tell you so much about them.
It can. The book suggests paying attention to vocabulary, grammar, slang, even accents to create distinctive and memorable voices.
It's like giving each character their own signature style.
Precisely. The book even suggests using non-standard grammar and slang to make dialogue feel more realistic and authentic.
So it's not always about perfect grammar.
Not at all. Sometimes breaking the rules can make dialogue feel more real and engaging.
That's interesting. And finally, let's not forget the importance of using dialogue to create a sense of rhythm and flow.
You're right. The book describes dialogue as being like music, with its own melody and tempo.
So it's not just about the words themselves, but how they're arranged and delivered.
Exactly. The book encourages writers to pay attention to the pacing of dialogue, using techniques like short bursts of speech, interruptions, and even overlapping dialogue to create energy and momentum.
It's like conducting an orchestra, guiding the reader through the emotional ups and downs of the story.
Exactly. And all these techniques can be combined and applied in countless ways to create dialogue that isn't just functional, but truly captivating.
This deep dive is making me realize that writing great dialogue is a craft
It is.
that requires attention to detail, a deep understanding of character, and a willingness to experiment and play with language.
It is. And the book offers so much insight to help writers hone their skills and craft dialogue that truly thinks.
This has been an incredible journey through the world of storytelling.
It has.
But before we wrap up, I'm curious to hear what stood out to you the most in this deep dive.
The thing that keeps coming back to me is the constant emphasis on emotion. It's not just about a good plot or clever dialogue. It's about knowing how to make the reader feel specific emotions and guiding them on an unforgettable journey.
That's a great point. It's like the book is a roadmap to the heart of storytelling,
Yeah.
revealing the secrets of connecting with readers on a deep and meaningful level.
Yeah. It really is like a roadmap. And speaking of journeys, the book also talks about crafting a captivating narrative voice. You know, it's like the voice of the storyteller guiding us through the world of the story.
Right. The book really emphasizes how a strong narrative voice can keep the reader engaged.
Oh, okay.
It's about finding the right tone, the right rhythm, the right amount of detail to make the story come alive.
So it's not just what you're saying, but how you're saying it.
Exactly.
Like the difference between a boring lecture and a captivating conversation.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And the book offers all these techniques for crafting a captivating narrative voice, like varying your sentence length,
Okay.
to create a sense of rhythm and flow.
So you don't want to get stuck in the same sentence structure over and over again.
Exactly.
Yeah, that would get pretty monotonous. The book uses the example of using short, punchy sentences to, create a sense of agency or tension,
Okay.
and then longer, more lyrical sentences for like moments of reflection or introspection.
It's like composing music.
Yeah.
You're using different notes and tempos to create a symphony of words.
That's a fantastic analogy.
Yeah.
And remember how we talked about the importance of using strong verbs and concrete nouns?
Oh, right. Show, don't tell.
Exactly. You want to paint a picture in the reader's mind,
Yeah.
not just give them a dry, boring summary of what's happening. The
Exactly.
book has all kinds of examples of using verbs that convey Action, movement.
Okay.
Words like leaped, crashed, whispered,
Yeah. Yeah.
instead of more passive verbs like was or were.
It's about making the language come alive,
Right.
giving it energy and movement.
Precisely.
Yeah.
The book also suggests using sensory details to, create a more immersive experience for the reader.
Sensory details. Oh, you mean appealing to the reader's senses.
Exactly.
Like sight, sound, touch, taste, and smell.
Exactly. Instead of just describing how something looks, you could describe how it sounds, how it feels, even how it smells.
That would definitely make the reader feel like they're right there in the scene.
Yeah,
Experiencing everything alongside the characters.
that's the goal. And then there's using figurative language to add depth and meaning to your writing.
Figurative language.
Mm.
Like metaphors, similes, and imagery.
Exactly. The book gives examples of using metaphors to make comparisons, similes to create, vivid descriptions,
Uh-huh.
and imagery to evoke emotions and ideas.
It's like adding layers of texture and complexity to your writing.
It is. And the book even encourages writers to experiment with different points of view.
Points of view, like first person, second person, third person.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Each point of view creates a different effect, and it changes how the reader experiences the story.
So it's about choosing the point of view that best serves the story and the emotional journey that you want the reader to take.
You got it. And something I find really fascinating is how much the book talks about finding your own voice as a writer.
Ah, yes. Developing your own unique style and personality. That's what makes a writer stand out.
It does. The book encourages writers to read widely and study the work of other writers they admire.
Okay.
But ultimately, you have to trust your own instincts and write from the heart.
So it's not about imitating other writers.
Right.
It's about learning from them and then finding your own path.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that writing is a process of discovery.
Okay.
It's about trying new things, taking risks, and pushing yourself beyond your comfort zone.
It's about embracing the joy of experimentation,
Yeah.
the thrill of creating something new and unexpected.
Exactly. And, the book ends on such an inspiring note. It reminds us that everyone has a story to tell, and that the power of storytelling can truly change lives.
This has been such an incredible deep dive into the world of storytelling. I feel like I have a whole new set of tools to play with.
Me too. It's been a pleasure exploring these ideas with you.
So for all of you listening out there, remember, it's not about rigidly following formulas. It's about understanding the tools that make a story grab someone by the heart and refuse to let go. Think about those stories that have stayed with you, long after you finish them. Chances are they mastered the art of emotional impact. What resonated with you most in this deep dive? What kind of story are you going to write now? And remember, even the most powerful stories can be found in unexpected places. Happy writing.